Greetings and salutations. You are listening to the Into the North podcast, where we take a look at the competitive side of the Commander format, also known as CDH. I am one of your hosts, Reed, aka Sick Robot, and today I am joined by my co-hosts, Matt, aka Null.
Yo.
And Morgan, aka Spleenface.
How's it going?
We are missing Lyndon Noobzors for another episode in a row, but I assure you you'll be back for the next one because he's gotta earn his keep, earn his share of the $0 that we make.
It's
anyway,
exam season. I don't know.
Yeah. In this episode, we are going to be covering white. This is another entry in our colors series. We're getting there, getting close. I've been pushing for this one for a bit, but we only really resort to these when we're fully out of ideas. So be happy that you're getting another one.
You don't have to say that.
Anyway, before we get into that one, you guys is up to anything since last episode that you want to get on with, Matt?
Yeah. Well, I did go to the face-to-face tour in Toronto, which is a modern main event. Oh, you did?
Right.
But they did have a lot of side pods going. They had regular Commander pods and Commander Plus, which I guess is their, you win a prize, so bring your best deck. And there were actually some CEH decks there, which I was pleasantly surprised to see. I went money positive.
Hey, that's pretty good.
Which is not bad. But it was fun. It was cool to see a bunch of people IRL playing Magic.
Yeah, definitely. Do you know what won the event? I'm just interested. I didn't actually look it up. I guess instead of asking you who didn't enter the event, didn't really care, I could probably just go look it up.
I think it was it was either Elementals or Yawgmoth.
Yeah, okay, just money pile.
That's actually
makes sense.
Yeah, that's kind of what's been Kelly Modern at this point, right?
Yeah, I've been saying this for a bit now, and I'm pretty sure you both heard me complaining about this. If they ban Yorion from Modern, they will have fixed all of the broken companions, and they can literally just revert the errata after they do that.
They won't.
All of the busted commanders have been banned in all the formats, even post errata at this point, so they can just ban it and revert it, and we're all fine.
That being said, I did see a spicy rendition of Umori, which is basically the commander deck I built, but in Modern. So you only play sorceries, and you win with Torment of Hailfire.
Oh my god!
And apparently it 5-0'd, says Magic Online.
I do feel compelled to point out when discussing the companion errata, I very specifically said this sucks because all the decks that relied on their companion to work properly get slammed, and all the decks that just kind of free rolled a companion for value don't actually get hit that hard, and here we are.
And behold, every deck
Aethervial was happy. I don't know.
Which is strange, because Aethervial shouldn't be happy. Yorion is just that good. The whole point of Aethervial decks is that, you need the density of Aethervials in order for them to be effective, mana accelerants. Because you're conceding every other possible mana accelerant for the most part, except for the Aethervials to play Aethervials in your deck. So, the fact that you could also just play 80-card Aethervial decks and they're still fine is just not okay. Anyway. Morgan. Got anything?
I guess technically this isn't since last episode, but I don't think I got a chance to brag on that one. We entered the Chaos at the Nexus tournament. And,
we did.
I top forward. Finally have an event result playing Hullen, so the Hullen server can no longer whine at me for not playing the deck.
It's a cool deck.
Actually, yeah. Sorry, I take that back. Hullen players definitely aren't yellers. They're definitely whiners.
The Hullen server's great, and I love them.
Okay, so we've got yellers, whiners. What else? What are the categories?
Oh yeah, true. You rank deck pilots by what kind of complainer they are.
although
player archetypes.
It's actually the best tier list.
kind of a funny story from that event. My first pod was me, and then Timna Tana, Timna Thrasios, and Thrasios Vile Smasher. And everyone reveals their commanders, and people are immediately joking, giving me semi-fake sympathy, oh wow, one like expensive commander centric deck and just a pod full of partners. But I was actually sitting there like, this is perfect. I'm going to out mid range all of you so hard.
Nice.
So it's so impossible to deal with that deck without Tyrannus. Anyway, without further ado, we'll hop into housekeeping. That's some
Speaking of Tyrannus,
yeah. We got some new patrons as always. So thank you to Lucas H.
Thank you to Andrea J.
Yeah. I said I'd stop last episode, and I'm not gonna carry it on anymore. London stopped.
Yeah.
Far
stop saying
ago,
you
so.
rock. Oh,
yeah.
shit.
Oh, there you go.
Oh, come on.
All right. Go to new developments now. I mean, this is really the only one. The day that we're recording this is the day after the decklist database update went out. So, I mean, if you're not already following the Twitter or in the Discord server, do that. If you're interested, go check it out. There's some pretty neat decks on this update.
Maybe I shouldn't ask this now, but there's a Twitter.
Yeah, we started one up a while back. It's literally just so that people don't have to be in the Discord to get updates. if you follow the database Twitter, you don't want to be in the Discord or whatever. We post whenever we're doing updates, policy changes, pushing like new reviewer applications, all that kind of stuff. So
do you actually publish the changelog or just?
We do. We publish a screenshot of the changelog from the Discord. So all that good stuff.
I would love to see that on the website, but I'm old-fashioned, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. I won't get into it. Anyway, yeah. So with that, we'll get into our main topic. White in CDH and Commander. Again, for anybody who, I don't know. I guess you could just be hopping in. This is a really weird time to hop in if you are, but we're now on our 4th out of the 5 colors in our monocolored series, where we just talk about like basically what role our colors actually play in CDH, what they do well, what they actually contribute to the decks that they're in, all that good stuff. And it's just sort of like an analysis of what they do, which is hilarious that we've taken this long to get through all of them, because I think some of our old conclusions from other episodes are already out of date. Even though they were done like less than a year ago at this point. I think
I'm also happy though that we waited on White a little bit, because there have been some new cards.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean,
that make White more and more viable.
And there are definitely some new like design concepts that Wizards is experimenting with that like is definitely makes it an interesting time for White that we can sort of speculate on. But yeah, so we'll go through a couple sort of categories of what White contributes and sort of just talk through a bunch of this stuff. We'll try not to turn it into a list episode, although inevitably all of our episodes turn into list episodes. But we'll try to keep it about concepts rather than just talking about cards. Anyway, so the first thing that we typically go through on these episodes is talking about basically just what the combos that the color contributes to the format are. White is sort of funny in that it doesn't really it doesn't really compose any like huge combos on its own, or really, I don't know, like I would say White contributes to any of like the format defining combos is how I'd put it, which is unfortunately why we're seeing a lot of like Grixis shell for combos.
Probably the closest to that would be like Sevrek, but that's like
it's just like barely.
And like there are lots of decks that play Intuition and Breach and don't need a Sevrek, so
yeah.
Like,
it's just it's weird because like so this is gonna be a running theme throughout this gonna be a running theme throughout this entire episode, and basically whenever you see White mentioned in the context of EDH ever, really Magic ever, White is like just super fair, just like unbelievably fair, and like not unfair in a lot of ways, which sort of lends itself to not being a great combo color just in general. Obviously design mistakes get printed all the time, but for the most part, like Wizards tends to be, it seems like they tend to be pretty conservative in terms of what types of effects that they actually want to push in White. So we haven't gotten a lot, but we do have a list of some stuff in here. I'd say the first one that we have here is probably the poster child for White's combo packages, which is just Feldar Guardian.
Yeah.
The Kiki classic, Kiki core card. I don't know. It
Yeah.
like it contributes to a lot. You can do pod stuff with it.
Yeah, I was gonna say even just pod without Kiki, like Elder Guardian makes sense.
Yeah, you just like skip stuff. You get fast flickers, which is sort of nice. I'm not sure. I guess the other one would just be like MEL plus Feldar plus Guy's Cradle as the other like Feldar Guardian combo. But yeah, I mean, just like
Oh,
contributing to pod lines and like survival of the fittest lines and stuff is just sort of it's sort of going to be a running theme in terms of a lot of White's combos. That being said, the next one up, I don't know if somebody else wants to handle this, but this is like probably one of the most real combos in just White.
Yeah,
it's a deck.
I'd say it's like the most mono white combo.
Right.
It does
sure.
feel quite
In that
mono
it loses to everything.
Oh, yeah. You can't play
Come
any
on,
good
bro.
White stacks with this.
Hey, you play
Heliod
rule law,
plus
exactly.
Ballista. That's what we're talking about.
Yep.
That's no longer an inside joke.
Yeah, I mean, it's just lose a curse stone, lose null rod. Suppression field sort of is rough for it, but you know, gets under rule of law. Pieces
Does
aren't
get under rule of law.
absolutely terrible on their own, depending on what type of deck you're running.
Yeah, Ballista's generally just good. That being said, you don't necessarily want to bin your Ballista in this deck.
Yeah, it's
Oh,
it's
like
def-
actually use it? Yeah.
Like, actually
Yeah.
complete the Ballista.
yeah, and the fact that the ballista has to have 2 counters on it is like, it just makes the whole combo like a little bit awkward. It feels like it should be a really cheap combo, and then
It's like a 3-mana and a 0-mana card. What?
yeah, it's a
that
3 mana and a
expensive.
0 mana card, and it's a 9 mana combo. Obviously, you can like change that up a little bit by like if you have a life gain trigger, then you know that means you only have to play the ballista for 1, and you can obviously just play Heliod ahead of time. It's an
Yeah, you're almost
indestructible
always just
enchantment,
playing Heliod.
but yeah, it's definitely like surprisingly mana intensive for a card with pieces as cheap as its pieces are, and like one that also is hit by both Nullrod and Curse Totem.
I think if Heliod were actually in any other color, and like in addition, it would be pretty competitive. Basically, any other color.
Yeah.
Straight up in the
I don't know
command zone.
if white red
I don't know.
Heliod Ballista would like get you that much.
Yeah.
You'd obviously get some good
Similar
cards,
artifact
but like
tutors.
I mean, blue gives you the artifact tutors. Red just
It
sort of
gives you
gives
the
you
artifact
like.
tutors, yeah.
I mean, red it doesn't even really give you much because you can't weld ballista in to do the combo is the issue, right? Like you actually just have to cast it for 2.
Yeah, you do.
Like it just just sort of rough.
I mean, you get Imperial Recruiter. That's obviously nice, but
Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, we got some other ones here. I'd say probably the next tier down. Well, okay, so
wait, hang on a second. I'm gonna reorder these so we can have them in decreasing order of how white they are as
yeah,
mono white
go.
combos.
I was about to say, okay. Next up we got we have Bomberman. A sort of similar thing, but I feel like Bomberman is just like way less good in like low color white, whereas like Heliod Ballista is like the low color white combo if you're playing a low color white combo.
Yeah, it's definitely not the best combo. I think it fits well in decks that are already going to be playing the LED at the very least.
Yeah.
And so then it's like kind of a 1 card slot in. Historically, it's obviously seen play in cats primarily.
I would say it's pretty like defining of the format.
I think it
It's just an
was.
old combo,
Yeah.
and it
but-
kind of holds up.
It kind of holds up, but it's still like it's pretty hate like vulnerable for
Yeah, basically all the hate.
yeah all the hate and discarding your hand, so all the removal and counter spells. Well, counter spells are like obviously if you just have a bit of extra mana, then you can get around.
Actually, does that make Bomberman more white because it also just requires a silence and the counter magic doesn't work?
Yeah.
Like you can only defend it with white effects.
Play into White's strength.
True, you can defend
Silence.
it with Veil. Veil's pretty solid.
It's sort
Yeah,
of good enough.
Veil's okay.
Yeah. I guess next up we have the Rectors, both Academy and Arena.
Arena is sort of a recent one to actually be a combo card at this point.
Yeah,
tacked on here.
With the printing of Vivian, you can do with it, like if you sack it, you get 3 mana pod chains or like if you have anything that has CMC3, you have pod chains for Kiki with like the classic Karmic Guide
Naya.
or Feldar Guardian Karmic Guide Kiki stuff. There's probably some other, like, maybe not clean wins, but stuff you can do in better colors.
Oh yeah, I mean, just like having a pod that doesn't cost mana to activate is just pretty nice, right?
Yeah. It also might actually enable, like, there's probably I doubt they'll be good, but they're probably actually, sorry, I know there are pod chains in other colors. They just, like, suck because you have to activate the pod so many times, and, like, sometimes you're doing like flicker effects and stuff. Like you,
Right.
like I remember mathing out a line that like involved finding and casting Cloud Shift.
Oh god.
Oh my god.
So like at the end of the day, the line was like 7 white or something. But like when the pod is free, that's actually like a lot, you know, more reasonable to chain through a bunch of, like, I mean, like, you could just, if you really wanted to, you could just go like Feldar Guardian Karmic Guide, the 6 mana Flicker Angel, like Rune Scarred Demon for another Flicker Razaketh, or
God.
Go all the way up.
just go all the way up, exactly. But like that is, it's not good, obviously, but it's a lot more reasonable when you're not paying, like, 1 mana for each pod.
Yeah,
activation.
exactly. So the fact that like you could just do like Sans red stuff is definitely sort of nice with it. And then of course, as we all know, Academy Rector, classic. Obviously, everybody and their mother is just super hot on Academy Rector for Omniscience right now, because that's always been the combo, and there's never been another combo with Academy Rector. Yeah, there's just never been another combo with it. I got Matt there. I think I got Morgan, but I got Matt.
I was gone.
Yeah, I mean,
again.
Academy Rector for Pattern of Rebirth has been a mainstay. Dare I say, since I started playing it. No. Academy Rector is solid Boon Weaver
since
tech.
Reed invented Flash Hog.
Yep,
Dude,
exactly.
Academy Rector for Possibility Storm? Holy moly.
That's also pretty
I have done that.
I know. Possibility Storm is still in decks.
It's a hell of a card. And
yeah, I mean,
sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just about to say, like, I think the Rectors are honestly sort of awesome design, and even getting like, I'm not sure what the other Rector could be that wouldn't be absolutely busted, but I would be interested in seeing more design along those lines, because it feels like they're not super busted in non-CH formats.
Does anything terrible happen if you have an artifact Rector?
Yeah, I was sort of thinking about that, because, like, well, its base level is just Citadel, right?
Yeah.
Like, creature tutorable Citadel. But,
doesn't
like, I'm not sure how bad that actually
devastating.
is, right? Yeah.
I think it's less unhealthy in, like, the more casual end of the format than Rector for Omniscience is already, so.
Right.
And Paradox Engine continues to be banned, so that's not an issue.
Just never an option.
Proof of work Omniscience.
So if that's proof of work Omniscience, I've been meaning to ask this question for a while. What's proof of stake Omniscience?
No. No. As foretold.
Oh yeah, that's true. Yep. Just let it sit around for a while.
You just have to invest early and and wait for a while, or dump a lot of resources into getting into it quickly.
Yeah.
Cool.
And then the last combo card that we have
the most least white combo piece. It is, of course, Sacred Guide. Famously combos with not playing white cards.
Which, honestly, is that not just the best white combo? You just don't play other white cards.
Really double down on the whole theme.
Oh yeah, that's my next challenge to Charles if he's listening to this, is you need to build a sacred deck mono white deck.
I don't care. Were you not there when he was saying he was considering putting it in his mono white decks?
Oh, that's hilarious.
Just
as a tutor.
As to free roll. Basically, the idea is that the white spells he's playing are more impactful than the non-white spells, and so it's worth it to pay 3 mana to just roll into a white spell. Like,
it's basically just a white abundance.
I mean, it sacrifices it. Abundant harvest. Thank you, or not abundant harvest. Wait, abundant. Whatever the
one-time abundance.
Yeah, the one-time abundance.
Yeah.
I forget.
Thank you.
It's abundant harvest.
Abundant harvest. Oh, I thought. Maybe I was like confusing with early harvest or something. Yeah, the fact that like Sacred God actually sacrifices itself, I guess you could do like cool stuff with what's it called, like angelic renewal and stuff like that with Sacred God. Just like keep reusing it. Draw white cards.
There are a few white cards that also like. Reanimate cheap
stuff.
Really cheap stuff. Yeah,
but it's like Sacred God just I'm not sure how much more actually needs to be said about it. Just funny haha meme, don't play white. Anyway, so those are like the core combos that white really contributes to for the most part. Obviously there's like some other sort of like combo related stuff that it does, but we'll sort of get into that one in the next segment of our podcast, which is the key themes part. So we're just sort of going to talk through some of the core strengths, key themes along white CDH cards in general, specifically at the top end of the format, because certainly the colors that we're talking about have probably more defined roles in other areas in the lower end of the format. But once you get up to the higher end, it's really, what does it do like the absolute best, which we'll talk about here. So the first thing that we're going to talk about, just to get out of the way, I think, is just talking about the type of interaction that white has access to, which really isn't a whole lot in terms of like categories. But I think the number of effects is probably, like, once you start factoring in subcategories here, is probably pretty large. Anyway, first up here, we have silence effects. So these are sort of a classic white effect. Actual factual silence, Grand Abolisher are sort of the classic too. But then you also have like variant silences
Ranger
like
Captain.
Orm's Chant, Ranger Captain.
I'm struggling to name some of these. There's
a couple that you
there are
can
a
cast
lot
in
of
combat,
narrow
I think.
silences and like other like copies of silence effects.
It's a strong card, so I don't
Yeah.
mind there being restrictions attached to it.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure the format would be better off if we had like 6 1-mana silence effects.
No, I'm actually pretty down for that not to be reality. Maybe if they were like, no, I'm just down for that not to be a thing.
So can I trigger an aneurysm for you real quick?
I'd
Imagine
prefer
if
if you
the
didn't.
white free cast commander spell was a silence.
No.
Oh no.
You just have to turn the green one into a
That's so
disenchant, turn the
bad.
white one into a silence, and now we have an incredibly busted cycle of cards.
Or just the white channel land was a silence.
Oh yeah. 3 mana channel for silence.
But unless you control a legendary permanent, it costs 1 less.
Oh yeah, 2 mana uncounterable silence. Anyway, so that's pretty much the extent of white's stack interaction for the most point, is sort of like proactive silence effects. Realistically, the next and the truly large category that we'll sort of talk about on its own, but just noting it here in the interaction, is stax effects. obviously,
Yeah, worthy of
white.
its own category for sure. But
Yeah.
also, it is interaction.
It is 100% interaction, and it sort of demonstrates the difference between if you consider white and blue sort of the classic control colors. It sort of gives you an idea of what their form of interaction actually is in terms of like interacting on the stack. Blue does a lot of like putting spells on the stack to interact with other things on the stack. White sort of wants to get ahead of stuff being on the stack by developing like permanents, getting permanents into play that interfere with your opponents actually like putting things on the stack. A lot of the time.
Yeah.
But we will certainly get a bit more into depth on stacks in a second, but we'll sort of get through the rest of this. In terms of removal, White has a lot of it. White can basically deal with any permanent type. It has creature removal at a reasonable cost. It has disenchants at reasonable costs. You can kill planeswalkers with stuff. You can
Disenchant being a white card.
Yep. Disenchant is in fact a white card. Classic.
Planeswalkers. But also
sort of
generic permanent targeting.
Yeah, I feel like there's probably less of that in mono white specifically, but white definitely contributes to like target anything to a lot of removal spells that we see. Vindicate is like classically like white brings the breadth of destruction there, right? Whereas black gives the actual like destroy target thing. Yeah, it's just sort of a white's pretty nice to have in a color as a color in the format, just because it just lets you it opens up like, okay, like I need a swords effect, so I'm gonna play Swords to Plowshares. I need a second one, I'm gonna play this Path to Exile. Like I need a disenchant. Okay, well I'll either play like actual disenchant, or I can play like a fragmentize, or just like stuff like that. I can basically deal with anything on the battlefield. And I feel like if you played with a lot of white decks in CDH and then you like go and play a different color combination, it's actually like relatively often that like when you're not playing white, you sort of end up being like, oh, this starts to get sort of awkward to actually find more removal spells, especially if you're not in like black and green, and then like suddenly you don't have Assassin Trophy and Abrupt Decay anymore, and you're like, okay, well I guess all of my removal is like temporary, like I have to like bounce stuff with blue, or like my green can't kill creatures, or like my black can't really kill like enchantments or artifacts. Red certainly can't kill enchantments.
So much not removal.
Yeah. So it actually, it's I feel like it's sort of like the silent part of White's interactive suite, but like just the fact that you have options to remove stuff is very strong.
Yep.
And then, I mean, this is sort of a meme as well, but we have mass land destruction here, because White does in fact technically kill lands if it needs to.
Yeah. Unconditional, on its own, mass land destruction if you need it. But please don't.
I mean, I would love to see a CDH where MLD was actually good, but unfortunately that's just not current CDH. I don't know. What's okay? Here's a question. I'm gonna keep going on tangents here, but okay. What do you think the shortest path to a CDH where MLD is good is? Like bannings on bannings, like new printings.
Well, okay, if you count balance, then that. But if you don't,
sure.
Which we also missed the opportunity when saying that white cards are generally balanced to point out, except ironically for balance. But no, I think it has to start with a fast mana ban.
Yeah, fast mana ban, definitely.
Right, and then you sort of just like only really opened up to green, and then like maybe if you end up with like a low green meta without fast mana,
and then like a 2-mana card that makes a lock with Lavinia.
No, stop.
Good old 2-mana possibility storm.
Sometimes I spend enough time dunking on Callahan. Sometimes I just have to throw them a bone.
If they just double down on like Clasms with, I don't know, extra things, draw, or just like good Clasm commanders, then that would get rid of the dorks making up for your rocks. In which case,
Oh sure.
you'd have to
like-
delete lands.
Just like a white commander with like its static ability is just ability, like activated abilities of non-land permanents can't be activated.
Yeah, something stupid. Yeah.
Yeah. How? Okay, never. I was about to go on another tangent and go into tangent square territory. We'll get back on track here. So yeah, moving into like the actual factual stack, because this is sort of like stacks. This is sort of the meat and bones of what White has going on in CDH for the most part. It sort of feels like everything that's not stacks that White has going on is sort of like piecemeal. Like maybe like silences are maybe the most like cohesive category of things that White does on a CDH level. But stacks is certainly like what you play White for in a lot of cases.
Yeah, and we kind of struggle to separate hate bears from stacks, just like semantically. But I think that, honestly, thinking about it, I think it's just because there's a lot of creature-based stacks that gets played.
Yeah, and it's certainly been like sort of the waters have been muddied a bit in terms of what Wizards has been printing, especially like maybe not like recently, but in the past 5 years or so, of just like putting a lot of historically like enchantment-based or artifact-based stacks effects on legs, and just like putting them on a body and shoving them out the door. Like we've seen a lot of like torpor orbs get printed on legs recently. Again, past 5 years
Yeah.
recently, but like
It's good for other formats.
They
Yeah.
like really went on a blitz with those and then kind of stopped, huh? Like it was not many years.
Oh, torpor orbs?
Yeah, like we got a bunch in a very short amount of time, and then we haven't. What was the last one we got? Was Hushbringer? That was 2019. Jesus.
No, we got the one in Strixhaven that's conditional.
Oh, like where they cost 2
What is it?
more?
Proctor?
Or something?
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess.
Strict Proctor? Yeah.
Basically, when landfall was in standard. I don't know.
Yeah. Pretty much. Just gotta shut down Field of the Dead, even though, like, they always, Wizards always wants to print the counter to the busted card like a set later, and it's never enough.
It's never enough.
Nah, remember when they printed Draneth?
That's
And
the
then-
exact example.
Yeah.
And then they were like, no, we're gonna dunk on Commander, and it's not even gonna solve companions. Brilliant.
We're gonna errata companions so that they're no longer affected by the hate piece that was intended to stop them. Yeah.
Happy
Anyway,
accidents, am I right?
yeah. So we have a couple of categories here that we'll sort of run through. And as much as I don't want to, again, turn this into a list podcast, we'll certainly list off some cards that fit into these categories. Matt, if you want to go first, just on
On hate bears?
yeah, just
Yeah, sure. I mean, we
we have
mentioned
hate bears
Drana.
on here first. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, a classic one is Even Mind Sensor. Which is
So, yeah.
redundant with a better one, hate bear, but I think we'll talk about that later.
Yeah, I guess we could sort of like walk through a bunch of these. Well, there's just overlap with hate bears specifically, but yeah. I mean, so specifically like the ones that we tend to see a lot, I guess, are rule of laws and tax effects that we have here, and then those sort of also just happen to bleed over into hate bears as well. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. It sort of just feels like not hate bears, rule of laws are just sort of like the place to be in terms of stacks effects right now. And it's sort of hard to come up with like cohesive, like super cohesive sets of stacks effects that White is known for currently, but there are a few.
Rule of laws are pretty much like strictly white. I can't really think of a lot of rule of law effects in other colors.
With the like, there's exactly
exception of,
Arcane
yeah.
Lab.
Yeah, right.
Which one could argue, well, is the original. One could argue that the effect should be named for, but
Yeah, fair enough.
definitely, like there's White has more of the prevention can't activate effects than most other colors. Like obviously there's collector,
Yeah.
even green, which is probably the one that actually sees the most play. But
And is sort of like a bit of a color pie bend, I would argue, but not by that much, but sort of just like in terms of like what effects that we typically see in like white, just like static on a body.
I guess now that
but
we're
yeah.
talking about it, like opposition agent being a color band, basically being a better even mind sensor is a tragedy.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, there are a lot of recently printed hate bears, like specifically like Collector Roof, Op Agent, and Hall Breacher were all just like probably all effects that should have just been
Dunks.
white, but
Yeah.
aren't, unfortunately. But yeah, like white, yeah, it's sort of interesting because white, again, the cohesiveness of like a through line of certain effects isn't really there until you sort of look at the meta picture, which is that white just has a lot of stuff that says you can't, or don't, or just, you know, pay more for that thing.
Yeah, the through line
just
is interacts with the meta. That's it.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, there's just like a bunch of stuff, you know, like there's Linvala, Sanctum Prelate, tax effects like Thalia, Hushwing Griff, Glow Rider. Hushwing Griff is a Torpor Glow Rider. I always get those ones mixed up. Anyway,
Vryn Wingmare is the one you're thinking of.
Vryn, wait, what? Okay,
Vryn Wingmare is a
just...
Thalia Glow Rider effect. It like non-creature. It's a thorn.
Oh sure, yeah. Okay.
With flying.
With flying.
And then, yeah, I mean, aside from that, in terms of stacks effects in non-creature bodies, they just go on and on and on. Certainly, Graveyard Hate is something that white has in its color pie and tends to be used to pretty great effect in a lot of CDH metas. But also, I mean, there's always stuff that hates on, like, artifacts. You can have Stony Silence forever, Kataki, Aura of Silence, like there's just a ton of specifically artifact hate, I guess, is the big one. But yeah, white just has, again, a lot of stuff that says no to whatever your opponents really want to do. And you sort of just have to go digging to find the effect that you actually need for a given meta, but it's like almost a foregone conclusion that white is going to have what you need in its very deep set of effects. You just sort of have to figure out whether or not it's at a rate that you're actually willing to pay.
Yeah, it needs to be at the right cost.
Yeah.
And I hate to say, but it doesn't happen to always be at the right cost.
Yeah, I mean that's the big one, right? Is that we do see like white have a lot of really powerful stacks effects that just like are just far too expensive to be of actual use in CDH for the most part, unless you're like trying to cheat it out or reanimate it or something. Certainly Elishnorn is an example of something like that, where it's like, yeah, great, super powerful effect. It's just nobody's ever hard casting this. Like you're almost always going for reanimates on Elishnorn or stuff. I guess some of the like the win conless stack stuff is trying to hard catch Elishnorn, but it's sort of outside of the realm of you play it as your finisher. Yeah, cool. I'm not sure if you guys actually wanted to touch on anything else here in terms of stacks, but it's just sort of, you know, walking through.
No, I think that's good. Like we could list a bunch of cards, but
yeah, it's just a lot of permanents that say no, as opposed to blues spells which say no. Just, you know, persistent, and they stick around on legs and sticks, and I don't know. Morgan, what do you call an effect on an enchantment?
I don't know. There's probably something clever, but
there's a term, right? Yeah. Anyway, aside from that, we have a couple more categories for white strengths.
Yeah. I started this next one, so I'll just go through it briefly.
Yeah, go for it.
I wrote value, and I could come up with Smothering Tithe and Sentinel, but at this point, I feel like it kind of stops there.
I think probably the more accurate version of this effect is that, and this is sort of what we were talking about earlier with Wizards experimenting, with new design space, especially for white in multiplayer formats. It's super niche, but they have actually been doing a fair amount of experimenting, which is white producing advantage or value based off of your opponent's actions. So you actually see this in both Smothering Tithe and Sentinel, where they're both like relatively powerful effects, but like the advantages that they generate are both tied to your opponents actually doing things. If your opponents aren't casting spells or drawing cards or whatever, I mean, Smothering Tithe obviously triggers on draw steps, but like if your opponents aren't doing stuff, then you're not going to get much out of them. But as soon as your opponents start doing things, then you start generating value from them. We actually saw this in recent spoiler season as well, with I can never find it when I need to. I forget what it's called. Smuggler's Share. Which is at the beginning of each end step, draw a card for each player opponent who drew 2 more cards this turn, and then create a treasure token for each opponent who had 2 or more lands enter the battlefield under control this turn. Same sort of thing. We also saw it with like monologue tax, all that kind of stuff. Mangara. There's just a lot of
Mangara. Yeah.
Dude, underplayed. 4 mana Crom.
I don't know
Anyway.
about underplayed, but I think the 2 that we mentioned basically make the cut in most white decks.
Yeah. So yeah, it's,
you know what? I'm happy to see more of these, but I do have to say, like, if you are trying to just build this like value / take advantage of other players doing things type deck, like there are better cards in other colors, and they just get lumped together.
Oh yeah, certainly. This is just like sort of a modern take on white, and especially I think it's one of white's strengths in CEDH specifically, outside of the stuff that we've already talked about. And then aside from that, of course, we always have to talk about the tutors for a given color and what can actually get through here. This one's gonna be a bit we're gonna be a bit more comprehensive with this list than we have been with previous color lists.
It kind of reminds me of the red list. The red ones were just as
spoiler
arbitrary.
alert, white is probably second to last in terms of well, it's second to last in terms of relevant tutorability. Just not great at finding stuff in general. Especially like it can't really find stuff through tutoring, and it can't really find stuff through drawing extra cards either. So you're just sort of stuck with what you got in your hand a lot of the time in mono white. But anyway, we'll go through some of these categories. Morgan, if you want to start off here.
Sure. So the first category is, I guess the first 2 categories are kind of one category now, since they're at which is legendary permanents and planeswalkers. There's a few different cards that find those.
So this class of stuff.
Generally, they're not super well costed, so you don't see them. You don't see them a ton, but it is
call the Gatewatch. See.
Yeah, like there is some ability there. That's like actually, There are a lot of effects that are just happen to be stapled to legendaries that like we don't like could certainly see play if people were looking for that.
Oh yeah, I mean, I think the one probably that's closest to seeing play in a lot of decks right now is just Search for Glory. Obviously the fact that it can cover like 2 additional types is pretty nice, but just being able to find legendary stuff sort of neat, especially in colors that need the additional gas. But yeah, I think we're probably gonna have to wait a bit to see the actual well-costed cards that are on raid for this effect. Although I guess Arena Rector became actually good. Well, I think given enough time, it's space that they're sort of like have implicitly stated that they're willing to explore and push a bit. Obviously, as I was saying, just like a redirector being printed and now being actually decent in the format is sort of I mean, yes, it came from Battle Bond. Yes, it's from like 4 years ago at this point. Oh god. But anyway, yeah, I'm interested to see where they go with it. Anyway, Matt, do you want to catch the next one, because this is pretty huge as well?
Yeah. Equipment. Wow.
There's a big category.
A ton. Yeah. I mean, I'm not like our equipment guru of the group, that's for sure.
Yeah, sure. Who would you say is the equipment guru of the group, Matt?
He's talking right now. It's not me.
I mean, yeah,
Anyway.
there's a fair. I would say probably equipment is what white currently is.
Probably has the most,
probably
and
the
also
yeah.
well costed.
Yeah, it's probably
Tutor packs.
like the largest class of cards that are actually playable in mono white in terms of tutors. I think for a lot of them the power level is there and the cost is there. We're just sort of waiting on
Kind of waiting for an equipment.
good equipment. I mean, we have Skull Clamp, but there's only so much that you can do
Yeah.
in low color white with Skull Clamp. Obviously, Cole loves it a bunch, and there are a couple of other Skull Clamp decks that love it a lot. But it's sort of, I feel like probably the best of the bunch right now that we have is just Skull Clamp, then maybe like GTA or Conqueror's Flail or something to that effect.
Yeah, Conqueror's Flail definitely underrated. What's the Boros one? I'm actually totally blanking now.
Fighter class for the tutor, or is it?
No.
Oh, Sunforger.
Sunforger, yeah.
Yeah,
Like that,
yeah,
like
yeah.
Sunforger. I mean, it's broken, but it could definitely just actually break at any moment.
Oh yeah, I think the current issue with the equipment tutor in a lot of decks is that like, unfortunately, Skull Clamp a lot of the time just isn't worth detutoring for, which is sort of like the issue is that like you have these detutors that only find Skull Clamp, and Skull Clamp just isn't good enough a lot of the time. I don't know.
Yeah, that's fair.
I think yeah, like we're definitely getting more every day, and of course Wizards has shown that they're willing to print good equipment in the past few sets. We just got the Disenchant on an equipment that's pretty nice. But I think we'll probably have to wait a bit longer until until the equipment tutor package becomes like fully ubiquitous among like low color white decks, where it's like, okay, yeah, like we actually have an equipment that's good enough that we just want to fire off tutors for it all the time now. We don't really
It's
have that
ready.
yet.
And for the person who doesn't know that it's ready and they do print the card that breaks them, they'll be so happy to find out that there are a bunch of equipment tutors.
Just ready to go, raring to go. I'm looking forward to when other people unironically are playing Relic Seeker, because I keep getting clowned on it for playing it, but it's legitimately good. Anyway, and then we have a couple of other ones here. Next one is a bit of a meme, but I mean, white does find basic planes very well. It just can't put them into play. Yeah, I mean the classic is Tithe here, land tax. Just there's a bunch of stuff in white that can like produce fake card advantage, which is why Scroll Rack has been seeing
Land
play
tax,
for a while.
like, never actually tutors planes though.
Yeah. Tithe does though, because it has to.
Guess it has to.
Yeah, there's just like a bunch of those. I think that, like the ones that do actually ramp you are conditional based on your opponents having more lands than you, which honestly sort of rough in CDH. People aren't really raring to put lands into play most of the time. A lot of the ramp comes from non-land mana sources, which is sort of rough. Dockside should have been a white card. Fight me. Yeah,
I don't think anyone's gonna fight
fair.
you on that.
It gives you inherent tension in your deck building. Do I play Stony Silence or do I play Dockside
Oh
Extortionist?
my gosh. Dude, actually, a white dockside would probably be worse of the format than a red one.
Really? I don't know. I feel like having to split your Dockside and Breach between two different colors makes like a lot of like helps a lot in terms of
That does help. I was thinking more like being able to put dockside into Brassios Timna.
Oh sure. I mean that's certainly that's disgusting. I'm not gonna
That
argue
makes a
about
lot
that,
of decisions
but
easy.
certainly like making it white, there's a lot of trade-offs. It's harder to cast it. Like you can't just like ride a flame dockside or whatever, right? Like you actually have to like actively have white mana floating around, which is like it would make
Honestly,
mana a lot harder in 4-color decks.
Produce white mana challenge in brackets impossible.
But Morgan, 4-color decks can already produce white 1 for Esper Sentinel off of Ranger Captain.
Yes, of
Shouldn't have a
course.
problem with Dockside and mono white anyway. And then yeah, I mean, aside from those, we have like, I think this is your point, Morgan.
Oh yeah,
Weirdly restricted creatures.
yeah. There's a bunch of like tutors that get creatures with various restrictions. Obviously, we have like Recruiter of the Guard, Ranger of Eos, and Ranger Captain of Eos, plus some stuff that cares about like typing. There's the Rebels. So like, you know, there's certainly enough coverage that there's like some access to certain, something approaching consistent access to certain effects. Most notably, I think this plays nicely with the Ballista, like the Heliod Ballista combo, where like you actually have a few different ways of getting it. But yeah, that's...
Oh my god, you know what white does? It has a lot of tutoring for cards with specific names.
Yeah, it is the Squadron Hawk color. And by Squadron Hawk color, I mean there are a lot of Squadron Hawks in white.
It's not helping you out in this format, but
nope.
in others you might be happy.
There are a ton of those. Yeah. Yeah. And then I mean aside from that, we always have to have this discussion when we're talking about white. Yeah, it tutors for enchantments, sort of, with like 2 cards.
Very playable card.
It tutors for enchantment. You can get one
singular. It's okay. So I think like people, we were talking about this in pre-show. People definitely like at least used to have the thought process that like white tutors for enchantments because of Enlightened Tutor specifically, and then like maybe you're playing what's it called?
Idyllic Tutor.
Idyllic Tutor. But realistically, what it actually is white can tutor for auras. And that's about it. Yeah. Yeah. That's about all I got. Or when it can tutor for enchantments, it's through some pretty expensive and clunky effects. I mean, you're looking at stuff like Lost Auramancers, you're paying 5 mana or 4 mana and then waiting 4 turns.
Yeah, well, Boonweaver was a thing.
Does find auras specifically, yep. Aura Touched Mage, Totem Guide Heartbeast. Plea for Guidance, 6 mana, but it's a tutor, technically.
It's 2, it's a double tutor, Stonks.
It is a double tutor. 3 Dreams, triple tutor for 5 value. Can't beat it.
Wow.
I mean, there are...
Well,
actually, you might not actually be able to beat that. I don't know if there's any other card that lets you get 3, like tutor for 3 cards for 5 mana.
Okay.
5 mana? Yeah.
I was about to get you with your own spice there,
Behold
but
the Beyond.
5 mana, no. Yes.
Come on.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna forget about Behold the Beyond. Don't worry.
Oh, man.
But yeah, so that's basically all white's got tutors for. As you can sort of see, it's pretty limited in terms of like actual useful card types. For CDH specifically, there are like some good tutors, like basically specifically Enlightened Tutor. But anything aside from that, it gets either very situational or the rate is just so bad that it's not even worth it. Yeah, so that's not all of white's strengths, unfortunately.
Yeah. And that's the strengths. Now let's get into the weaknesses.
Yeah. So as you'll see on the shift from sort of its strengths or key themes of white cards and ZH to its weaknesses, this is you probably will have seen this in the title, because I wouldn't be surprised if I end up using this as the title for the episode. Thanks, Matt, much appreciated. But yeah, white is really just fair to a fault, or it's too fair for its own good. It's too symmetrical for its own good.
I think that was your title, man. I don't know what you're saying.
You came up with the idea to make the title.
Make it a title. Yeah.
Credits to Matt on this one. Anyway, yeah. So really, like the core issues with white, and we'll break it down a bit more into like actual more pinpoint issues. But the core issues with white really is that it's just too fair for its own good. It's trying to do stuff at too slow of a pace, too bad of a rate, not unfair enough to like really be like super good in CH in terms of like actually pressuring stuff and getting stuff done. It's pretty great at stopping people from doing stuff, but that's a whole different thing. Although we did, I feel like we covered that pretty comprehensively. So anyway, yeah. In terms of actual like more pinpoint weaknesses, Morgan, do you want to start us off on these?
Sure, yeah. So, I mean, the first one is card draw. The Wizards has been extremely reluctant to print anything that resembles drawing cards in white. I remember there was much fanfare made about how white was getting a card draw spell that I believe turned out. This was in Throne of Eldraine. I believe turned out to be Happily Ever After, which, first of all, it draws card, not cards, and second of all, it also draws your opponents a card. And I think that's
Well, there's
the
the
fair.
other one, right?
the other one.
There was the sorcery that drew everybody cards. There was like the 3-mana one that draws everybody 3 cards, right?
Maybe, but the point is, neither of those effects are good.
Yes.
It's
secret rendezvous for the record in Strixhaven.
yeah, like so. There's a couple. There's a couple cards that are like decent. Or sorry, not cards. There's like a couple of ways that white can draw cards. Usually, like on the back of some other effect. With cards like Mentor of the Meek or like Pure Steel Paladin and SRAM. There are cards that for playing other cards will let you draw.
Or you'll see the effect on just like the plays that you'll actually see draw effects in white on like probably the highest volume of cards is just like the bad draft commons that needed an additional thing on them so that they weren't just unpickable. So like you'll see like a lot of healing salves with draw card tacked on, or like very minor combat tricks for like 1 mana with a draw card tacked on, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's a couple other things that like let you draw cards, based on being behind. But generally, there's just not a lot of ways to consistently be generating card advantage, in those colors, and it seems like there's probably not going to be.
Yeah, I can't imagine. Like, I think there's been a lot of complaining about the lack of card advantage in white from the EDH community at large, but it's like I think Wizards fixing that or like getting people to complain less isn't going to come from good card draw. It's going to come from like just card draw in some form that isn't necessarily at a great rate.
Yeah. They've definitely I don't mind, they've been experimenting. Like, I think the getting back cheap cards is like kind of an interesting way to go for a way to generate card advantage. But I think unfortunately effects like that in EDH are kind of sufficiently narrow that it's hard to like justify, like you have to have a certain level of consistency in these effects in your deck that you're just not going to have when you're playing 100 card singleton, for that to like work in EDH, even if it might work in like standard or modern or some other format like that.
Yeah,
Yeah. Basically, our only hope is for Wizards to just forget about some edge case and print a really strong effect in the command zone.
Yeah, the effect is also just like sort of low power in terms of like really you want effects in like to produce cards in EDH for the most part. Like they're really the best effects that can produce cards are the ones that like scale with actions from your opponents or scale from just having more opponents. And you probably won't see that like the get back cheap stuff effect be stapled onto anything with those interactions for the most part. I can't imagine it anyway.
Yeah,
so.
it definitely sounds like a wonky card. For each opponent, choose a permanent with CMC 2 or less. Yeah, what?
Or like it immediately gets busted if it's like whenever an opponent does something, you like pay 1 and get back like a small dude or something like that. It just it all gets wonky very quickly.
Return a permanent with CMC less than the amount of opponents you have.
Hey man, if they print it at 0 mana, I'm down. Anything
Yeah.
else? No.
And it can't
Just
trip.
the white Phyrexian mana version of the card. Yeah. Anyway, so that's sort of the huge one. Next up we have another
I don't
pretty
know.
glaring
I feel like
weakness for
I feel like this is just as
this
huge.
next
but
one. Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
You want to cover it, Matt?
Explosiveness. White just does not have it. I mean, it just basically has the tools to play one card every turn.
And
Like,
it might be a very good card, but it's still a
Might be a
card
good
every
card.
turn.
but that's not really the CEDH mindset. So, unfortunately. But it has its plethora of artifact ramp, obviously, but that's about it.
It doesn't even
green.
it doesn't even really have that much artifact ramp. Like it has the signets and stuff.
Yeah,
and,
losing
but, like,
talismans is tough.
Yeah.
I guess like specifically for mono white, but no, it's not the density you would like. It's not like green where you can just have this insane density of dorks. It's not like red where you just get to cheat mana, and then I guess the same goes for black.
And then even blue, just like the fact that blue can sort of cheat mana in a lot of scenarios. I mean, blue is sort of like the untapped color in a lot of ways, and then it also just finds artifacts pretty nicely.
Yeah, and it makes up for it in card draw.
Yeah, exactly. And like the card quality is just there. You do a lot of just more explosive stuff. It does, like, blue has also just like the combos that can do stuff ready to go. That makes it more explosive, sort of inherently. White just doesn't. It just, you don't really get ahead on mana when you're playing white. You don't really get ahead on cards a lot of the time, immediately anyway. Like, pretty much anything that white is doing on its own is going to take a very long time to execute. White tends to play out over a very long time span, compared to other colors in terms of like its main game plan.
Yeah, and like if your impact is like, I guess impact technically counts as explosiveness, but if you're actually just playing one card a turn, but you're genuinely impacting the board, that's fine. But I also don't think that white really has that impact.
I mean, I'd say that's strong. I wouldn't call that explosive. Like it can be strong without being explosive. It's just like it's never. It feels like it's never explosive. It feels like for a lot of the time, like in white primary game plans in CDH, you can sort of just like see stuff coming. It feels like there's a lot fewer surprises coming out of white than there are just with other colors, to me.
Yeah, I think if white genuinely could lock the board down consistently with few cards, I would call that explosive. But I don't know. Like if you can expect out of a white deck to just genuinely execute well on like a stax plan and also be breaking parity with it in the early game, I think that would be explosive. But I don't know. Anyway, that's like, it's not really the point. We're talking about mana. We're talking about mana.
Yeah. And really, I mean, that's another weakness of white, is just like the just more specifically than explosiveness, just the mana problem. In pretty much every way, it just doesn't really produce mana all that well, as I was saying earlier.
Okay, so white doesn't get cards, and it doesn't get mana. So what else does it not do?
Well, I mean, this is sort of the same as a bunch of the other colors, but even more so. So you do have silence effects, but aside from that, you're sort of dead on the stack a lot of the time. These don't really do a whole lot at instant speed for the most part. Certainly there are some impactful instants, and some cards with flash, but realistically, white tends to play out at sorcery speed a lot of the time too. So you're really not going to be like holding up mana or doing stuff on other people's turns unless you're doing specifically like activated abilities, and even then it can be pretty narrow.
It technically has counterspells. I don't know what you're talking about.
Has mana tithe and
lapse of certainty.
Lapse
of certainty. That's the one. I was like, it's not memory lapse. That's Dan card.
That's a better card.
The other one. Yeah. So I mean, those are sort of the core. It sounds like it sounds like a small number of points in white's weaknesses, but unfortunately, they're all like pretty extensive weaknesses in terms of like how deep they go, and how crucial they are to playing CDH. So it's a bit unfortunate, but In terms of shoring up those abilities, we will move on to the next section here, which I think is the last section anyway. Which is how does white pair with other colors? When you get past monocolor, and when you get past sort of just like white's inherent stuff that it does on its own, how does throwing in other colors to it affect it? And we'll go through each of the 2-color pairings that white can pair up with, and just sort of talk about what the other color adds to white and how it affects white's game plan. So I guess we'll start off with blue-white. Blue-white is the sort of the classic control pairing in every format. Blue offers the stack interaction to complement white's permanent based interaction. Blue shores up actually a fair amount of the value issues with white. Being able to draw cards is a really big deal, and being able to produce cards to actually like continue to play your white stuff, and really more card selection is the value here for white getting out of blue, at least in my opinion, of just like being able to have the right cards on time, which, spoiler alert, is sort of a benefit for some of the other colors here as well. But that's sort of one of the key issues of white is the it's the same issue that mid-range has in other formats, which is the mid-range problem is you draw the wrong answers for the wrong matchups, and that's also sort of white's problem, is that like there's such a variety of effects that you want, and you just can't find any of them consistently a lot of the time in mono white. So blue's version of shoring up that weakness is just allowing you to see more cards in a game in order to find access to those effects.
Yeah, honestly, I would say that's like just such a key piece.
Oh yeah, I mean, and then also, I mean, along
Such a
with the
huge
stuff,
difference.
yeah, blue also adds some win cons. It's nice to be able to have access to stuff like Isochron Scepter, now Hullbreaker Core, that kind of stuff. I get technically Shift Lash is a thing, but oh boy, that's a tall order for these decks. Aside from that, I feel like I'm missing a combo, but I could be completely wrong.
I think the artifact tutoring helps a lot with white's win conditions.
Because
like,
it's
getting
for like Helm. I don't like.
I guess, yeah, I don't know.
I don't know. That's whatever. Oh, I guess actually, you know what the actual huge one is here is reality chips, since you can actually tutor for your future site with your equipment tutors, I guess. Yeah.
That's it.
That's the equipment that you need to be able to tutor for consistently. Just get a future site.
All it took was to think about white for more than an hour.
Yep. Took us a bit. Definitely thought about that one 2 hours ago when we were doing show notes, and not just immediately right now. Anyway, so that's sort of blue white's thing. Blue white still tends to be pretty slow in the format, just because white doesn't offer, again, a whole lot of fast stuff. So you sort of just want to take things slow, whether that means like a control axis or like a stax axis or like a mid-range sort of thing. You're almost still never going fast here in these colors.
No.
Which sort of might be changed by the next one. Morgan, I think you had the most to say about this.
Sorry.
For the next color combination.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I was like,
yeah.
So the next color combination is, of course, black-white. And black-white has always been in a very awkward spot, I think it has to be said, because you don't have, like, basically, white, as we said, sort of tends to want to go slow, have a lot of these disruptive effects, and black is like kind of the opposite of that, where like you have your tutors and your rituals and just all the stuff to like really execute your game plan quickly, but then your game plan is to play a bunch of cards and wait around, and so there's just a lot of internal tension, like people try and do Razaketh things or whatever, but like a lot of white strength is in hate bears that make it hard to play Razaketh, or things like that,
or like you try to go into stacks and it's like, well, I guess I'll play some black cards, but like I'm not taking it full advantage of a lot of what black's doing. I'm just sort of like putting tutors in the deck and calling it a day, or I'm doing the black thing and playing a bunch of really explosive cards and trying to go like turbo ad nauseam, and then I'm just like playing exactly the silences, I guess. Like,
yeah, it's just
You can't undersell like being able to tutor for the right paper though, which is like such a weakness.
but the problem is that there's not, like, black tutors are obviously really good, but there's not that many of them that are good. Like in the way that green can just like tutor random creatures and not have to like really strongly consider, is spending this tutor on, I don't know, opposition agent gonna mean that like how much does that delay me assembling some game-winning combo? And when you have like Vamp, Demonic, Seal, Diabolic Intent, maybe Wishclaw, like spending one of those to find that perfect hate bear, like there's a decent chance you don't see another tutor before the game ends.
And spending a card in white means you're passing the turn.
Your rule of law, yeah. That's the big one too. Is just there's also there's internal tension in this color pairing like all the way down the chain. It's like like the tutors are great, except they're also just like not good with the rule of laws. So like, are we just accepting that that's an attention and that the cards are just good enough on their own that we can afford the anti-synergy? But like, yeah, there's just like so much there.
But you do get access to the best black card opposition agent.
Just I love that white getting opposition agent. Like for any other color it's like pretty great. For white it's just like, well, I guess I'm just like shedding my worse opposition agent and just putting op agent in my deck.
Yeah, and the last defining feture of
the
black
saving
white
grace. Yep.
Oh boy.
The reason why you're playing white in the first place.
There's a little card called Timna the Weaver, who has single-handedly made white-black X archetypes playable for a very long time.
It's white because Timna has lifelink.
And as a cleric, you can't forget Timna being a
yeah, it's a cleric.
But it like actually like this is my hot take for the episode. Actually, like has an argument for being the strongest commander ever printed.
I
but
believe you.
Like is so not representative of black white as a color combination.
I mean, the second best piece of text on it is partner.
It's just it's just so good. It's like it's hilarious because it's like the best. It's possibly like in contention for the best commander of all time. And we had this discussion pre-show, is legitimately just the best white-black card of all time in CDH.
Yeah, and it's not
like nothing
close.
Else even comes particularly close. Like the next closest thing is probably like Vindicate. And it's like that doesn't see play in anything. Or like if you count lands, I guess. But even then, I would take Timna over a scrub land 100 times.
Yep. Unless I don't have lands.
Unless I'm allowed to resell it.
True. So that's black white. That's sort of fun. It actually dovetails into our next section into our next color combination pretty well, because the issue that we were talking about with tutors gets solved by this one. If you want to catch it, Matt.
Yeah, this is basically my safe space in CEH. But green white, green white, like actually shoring up all of the weaknesses we mentioned. So on one hand, ramp obviously is there, and unlike black, which cheats on mana, you can actually make white mana with green cards.
And also, like, the fact that it's not explosive mana like black's mana. Like, black's mana is all, like, super explosive, single turn, like, you use it that turn, all that stuff.
It plays in the white's thing with it, which is to be consistent and to, like, commit resources, so, like,
and
actually...
do its thing every turn.
Reusable mana, great. I mean, I think I guess in some way, green kind of makes up for the card advantage a little bit because, going from
No, I'd
none
say
to some
I'd
is
say it
definitely.
almost certainly does, especially with the next thing that you're about to talk about. Yeah.
Yeah. And then on one hand, you also get access to all the tutors you want because like a lot of white stacks and generally speaking good hate pieces are creatures. In addition to that, a lot of white's kind of A's and B's are creatures. So you're kind of enabling your game plan and you're also creating ways of winning. Yeah.
And also
then,
like the well, and also the sort of it's sort of interesting in that like so the bulk of the tutors is there, like Morgan was saying earlier, with like black, you only have so many playable tutors. They're all really good tutors, but you only have so many. Green, sort of have a super large range of tutors that you can play. And if you want to just like play 15 creature tutors in your deck, you can, and it sort of like relieves the mentality of like, do I want to spend this tutor? Because you can almost assuredly be like sure that if you need to find another green tutor over a long game, you probably can.
yep. It kind of, yeah. It's also like if you need to make one play and tutors are generally speaking, well, green creature tutors are generally speaking expensive relatively. You do get to like make sure you actually get the right creature rather than drawing 7 random white cards and hoping you always have the right one for the moment.
Right.
Which is not the case.
There's also the sort of the hidden anti synergy here, which is that again, like comparing it to black, because this is like it's just like green complements what we're getting at here is green complements white in all the ways that black doesn't. Like green's tutors also, they're almost always to board tutors, which means that you're not actually wasting a turn under rule of law because you're just putting the thing directly into play.
Actually goes right to play.
Yeah, it just does everything. green white. Name a more iconic pairing.
I actually don't remember exactly what we put for the like white green, like in the green episode.
The other side of this.
Yeah.
You know what?
I'm pretty sure we talked about how you now have good cards to find with all the creature tutors, which is
yeah.
Yeah.
Hilarious because the other half of that one with the green black sort of immediately went down the drain as soon as South Agent got printed, but still holds up for this one. Yeah, it just provides a bunch. Yeah, I mean, I think that's all we really have to say about green white. It's just good. It's like maybe like the most synergistic pairing of colors after blue black, maybe.
I don't know.
And even then, maybe it's just
up there.
Maybe it's just more. It might just be more
More,
synergistic than blue black, but like less powerful on the whole.
Once again, safe space. It just feels good to play.
I don't know, man. Blue red has some synergy, that's for sure.
Blue red does.
Yeah. I guess the one thing that green doesn't really solve for white is efficient win con specifically. It doesn't give you a whole lot of like actually being able to win the game early, so you don't really get explosiveness out of green. Like green doesn't make white explosive. It just like makes white better at all the stuff that it's already doing.
It also kind of lets white not need to be explosive more.
Well, it just comes from the consistent mana acceleration, right? Is that like you're not explosive, but you just do better stuff over the same span of time.
Your game plan is quicker and more consistent.
What more could you ask for? And then finally, I think we went over this in the red episode. Yeah. But anyway, we have Boros, red white. What a tragedy of a color pairing, really. Although I feel like it's definitely been redeemed in recent years. It feels like in the before times of like before partners were omnipresent, Boros seemed like it was just like the worst color combination for a really long time. And I feel like we've seen a lot more exploration recently of like what Boros as a color combination actually means that's sort of produced fruits in terms of just playable commanders and playable strategies and stuff.
I think I'd rather play red white not okay. Discounting the most popular red-white commander, I think I'd rather play red-white than black-white.
Oh, almost certainly, yeah. I mean, even just like in terms of cards at this point, like if you couldn't play a commander, I think Boros might just still be better than
Without commanders.
Borisov at this point without commanders, just because like the stuff that Boros
that
does
might
is
be
just so
tough.
much more in line with what each of the individual colors is doing. Anyway, what Morgan? Do you want to get your quote out of the way here because it really is a great quote that sums this up.
My quote is Winota isn't a color identity.
Yeah. So
Yes, it is.
we'll definitely we're definitely talking about Boros here, but we aren't necessarily talking about specifically Winota because Winota is a whole other deal that like pulls way too much weight out of the command zone to make meaningful conclusions on what Boros actually does.
Yeah.
It just
That
hate to say it, but
that one's
just
a
too good.
little broken. Just a touch.
Yep. I mean, it's a 4 of in a tier 1 deck in Pioneer. Like, just,
my god.
dominated standard for a while, it feels like, just putting in Agent of Treacheries.
Pioneer.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, in terms of, like, what Boros actually does, it's got some pretty neat stuff. It definitely has this is Matt's point, thanks, but it definitely...
No problem.
Red offers the other half of the equipment payoffs / equipment tutors stuff. So just the ability to like weld your equipment around. You pick up Sunforger off of this color pairing, which is probably the best equipment to just blind tutor for. Like irrespective of the other stuff that you have going on. She's got a bunch of great stuff. With the sort of like the tutors that you already have access to. Red white's pretty great at leveraging.
There's
those
a lot
tutors.
there's a lot of red equipment draw kind of synergy, and that shores up the card advantage problem.
Yeah, that one too. I mean, especially considering the equipment themselves that actually draw. I mean, you can play SoFi in mono white, but it's sort of like less stuff like that feels less impactful than when you also have other like powerful stuff going on from red. This color combination is also sort of weird because it seems like it gets more. It seems like this is really the color combination that actually makes white the most explosive out of all the two color combination stuffs. Because black doesn't actually do like much to interact with white. You just sort of put the black cards in a white deck, and now you just have a black-white deck. Red actually sort of synergizes with the way that white wants to play, while also giving it a bit of speed in terms of like fast mana. You have obviously red is the current ritual color. You have Dockside. You have a bunch of other stuff. Your like equipment tutors actually tutor for stuff that like you use that mana reasonably well, so like you aren't necessarily forced into having to play like stax to do your stuff. Although it's still certainly a viable option in the colors. It also gives you creature combos, which is sort of nice. We have creature combos here on the show notes. Were there any more that somebody was actually thinking of?
Yeah, it might have just been Kiki, honestly.
Well, it works.
Good enough.
Because you have Splinter Twin as well with exactly Village Bellringer, I guess. You like it. Basically. It offers some stuff. You got more stuff going on than just mono white. But unfortunately, I mean, we still have this color combination bogged down by sort of the eternal plague of Boros, which is there's just so much combat in these colors, and none of it is particularly good for CDH aside from the Winota, she who shall not be named.
It'll happen once we just get the density of combat. I think we're just waiting for density, right?
Just how many Sarah ascendants could they print before combat actually becomes a thing?
70 Sarah ascendants wouldn't even do it.
Yeah, we're
actually maybe it would.
I think like the only time you're gonna see, it's just, like the only time we're ever gonna actually see what's it called like combat be a thing is with undercosted threats. Like irrespective of the command zone, rather, is with undercosted threats, and I feel like just red-white just isn't the color for undercosted threats right now. That's just all green's territory currently. But yeah, so those are our color pairings. Unless anybody wants to get another point about any of these, but I feel like we covered them pretty comprehensively there.
Oh yeah, that's fine.
Good stuff. That's actually our main topic. Wrapped up. Yeah, I feel like that was pretty good. We got some good stuff in on how white goes. But next up we have everybody's favorite segment on the podcast. Gut check.
Good check.
Good check.
And our gut check today comes to you courtesy of Matt.
Yeah. All right, guys. Dig deep in your brain, okay? Because this is going to be a tough one.
Oh no.
So you know how we decided on what the 4th best combo in the format is, right? Okay. What is the 10th best mana rock?
10th best mana rock.
Best mana rock. Okay, I need to do some Scryfall digging for this.
Yeah, we're gonna have to be just search for artifacts with mana abilities, sort by EDA track.
So it would have to be.
I picked 10. I haven't actually gone through this list. I think 10 is enough where we get into that controversy territory. But
Yeah. Okay, do you consider the expendable rocks mana rocks? I'm assuming
Sure.
you do, right?
yeah,
Yeah. Okay. There's like. Yeah. Yeah, I think you actually might have been right on the dot with 10.
I knew it had to be a big number, but I felt if I went any deeper than 10, like it would just take too long.
Actually, you know what? I think I got a good one. I think, yeah. I have one that.
I'm still making my way down.
Town. Walking fast.
I'm at 8. I mean, I could
answer.
under level this one a bit.
I feel like it kind of depends on a little bit on what we're defining as a mana rock.
Yeah, that's fine. All right, I guess I'll just go with mine. Arcane Signet.
Ooh,
Wow, interesting.
What do you think?
that's. I think it's pretty
Think
good.
it's better than 10?
Yeah,
Or
I think
worse
it's better
than
than 10.
I think it's about on par with 10. Mine I think is actually Springleaf Drum.
Springleaf Drum's good. I don't know about 10
that.
on the dot though.
So
It's good.
I can explain the pick if you guys want. I know it defeats
Yeah.
the purpose of gut check, but I don't think that's
Well,
ever
okay, how
stopped
about
us
Morgan
before,
goes?
So
Sure.
okay, yeah.
It doesn't matter. I'm sure his isn't Springleaf
It,
Drum.
it is
Correct.
not. It is. Maybe mine's the spiciest. Talisman of Dominance.
I was hung up
Wow,
on
that's
Arcane
crazy.
Signet and Talisman of Dominance, but I think that Talisman of Dominance is just 11.
Okay, so you said expendable mana rocks. So I'd say like
Count.
the top ones for me, right, are like probably Soul Ring, Mana Crypt, Chrome Mox, Mox Diamond, and then Mana Vault, Grim Monolith, Lotus Petal. And then I have Mox Opal and Mox Amber as the last to finish off my 9.
I just don't. I
No,
don't
I
think those
have
are better
Mox
than 2
Amber
mana
and
rocks.
10.
I think
Okay.
they're narrow
So that's-
enough that I.
Okay.
Sure.
I think Mox Opal beats it out specifically because of Ad Nauseam, which kind of sucks. But
So I'm saying I said Springleaf Drum because I feel like Springleaf Drum has like the power ceiling on Springleaf Drum is just a lot better than the power ceiling on the 2 mana rocks. In terms of like when you pair it with stuff that like doesn't already tap for mana, and when you can consistently have the body in play, it's just better a lot of the time. And it's just like super strong in those situations.
Those
Because the fact
those
that you're, like, a
wins
dork.
are like concerning to me, for sure.
But that's why like I have it in the top 10 is just because like I think it appears enough in decks, and I think the spike is just so high that I would put it up there. I understand taking something like.
But like I don't know. It just
on
what
the assumptions that you
decks
want.
like. What decks are you playing it in? Not like you
Rogue
specific.
Rack.
Sorry.
Yeah, I was like, so you're sacrificing a whole partner for Springleaf Drum, pretty much.
Well, and Monk's Amber and Paradise Mantle, sure.
Sure,
Yeah.
but like that's sure the card is good with a Rogue Rack. I'm not gonna deny that.
Right.
But like that's not like Talisman of Dominance is good with anything in blue and black. Like I don't know. I think that you're often looking at like just too much of like too much has to go right for that card to be good. Obviously, Rogue Rack removes one step, but also is an 0-1 with no relevant abilities.
Sure.
And like a bunch of the other stuff that you're looking at is like even if you're looking at like a Thrasios deck where like it's 2-mana commander and you always want to have it in play, sure, makes sense. Except then you're also like, is this an oof Thrasios deck? Like it's a lot of the stuff that it's good with is cheap, like decks that are consistently putting out cheap creatures which happen to be green and therefore generally have better options than Springleaf Drum and want to play.
Wait, hot take, okay? What if you staple a Springleaf Drum, or give a Springleaf Drum legs? What would that
It's
card look
called
like?
Ceruli Caretaker.
Yeah.
I think that's what.
Do you mean
And it's
haste?
also the creature that you get to tap.
Okay, yes, it is in fact called Ceruli
The
Caretaker.
Birds of Paradise.
I was like, is
Yeah.
that the right one?
There's also
Yeah.
there are a couple of that effect, but yeah. Okay, well,
Nice.
I think we got some good takes in there.
This is also
I
a
think
gut
I
check
think I've
format that can be very much repeated.
just forever. I think. I think I might have the Tom and Nance.
Hey, where
I think-
is
I think I might
Arcane
have
Signet
the-
for
Sorry?
you, Morgan? Like, where is Arcane Signet on your list?
8th.
8?
It went. It was Arcane Signet,
decent.
Felwarstone, Talisman of Dominance was 10. I had
Oh yeah, I totally forgot
I
about
had
Chrome Wars.
Chrome Mox, Mana Crypt Soaring, Chrome Mox, Mox Diamond, Mana Vault, Grim Monolith, Lotus Petal, Signet Stone, Talisman.
I had. I mean, it's not. This isn't the actual question, but I had Basalt Monolith in my 10 because just combos. Like that actually
Yeah,
is
I mean, sure.
reasonable enough.
All right, so I will say I think I have the niche market cornered on this gut check. I think I'm gonna get some people coming out of the woodworks to support this. So if you're listening to this and you agree with the Springleaf Drum take, make sure to vote in the Discord.
Wow.
Anyway,
It's a shame. It's a shame Lyndon wasn't here to
Manipulation,
vote
vote
for Arcane
manipulation.
to vote for Arcane Denial. You know, like just.
All right. Now that we're good with gut check, we'll move on to the last portion of our show, which we haven't actually done in a few episodes. It feels like I could be wrong, but anyway, we're gonna cover some listener questions. Be specific, a listener question. So this listener question comes from Papophobia. Papophobia says, "Were you surprised to see?" And this is a callback to Marchesa, because we didn't really have time to do this last episode, so we'll do it now. Papophobia says, "Were you surprised to see a Cody deck make top 16 at Marchesa, or was it expected? I know in the podcast you guys talk about thinking the meta has evolved to expect Cody now, so I was curious what you thought about that placement."
Not
Yeah, I mean-
surprised at all, honestly. The deck is good, and also apparently we had enough of effect on the opinion that it also was perceived to be bad. So I don't know, not surprised at all.
Yeah, I mean, I feel it's sort of hard to separate in terms of just like visibility. I feel like it's sort of hard to separate my, or I guess our collective opinion on taking Cody to a tournament versus seeing Cody taken to a tournament. Because I feel like a lot of the time when we're talking about like Cody in the context of the podcast, or whenever any of us are talking about it, it's usually in context of like would I play Cody in a tournament right now? And I think the answer for all of us is probably no right now. Still, I don't think any of us would like actively choose to bring Cody to a tournament. But that being said, that's not because we don't think it's like completely unwinnable that you can't like win games with it in a tournament. It's just because we feel like it takes agency out of our hands to play Cody in a tournament currently, where like you just have to rely on the table not doing the thing and you doing the thing. And I don't think the risk reward skews the right way right now, like it did like coming to tier 1 con or whatever. Like right now the risk reward probably skews negative on that, but it doesn't mean that it can't do well, right? Like it's still a pretty great deck that could just completely wreck tables that aren't super.
Yeah.
I also
I think the meta can shift enough. Yeah, I think the meta can like churn enough away from quote unquote being prepared for Cody that there'd be room for it at a tournament.
I also think like the reason I wouldn't want to, or like I don't necessarily think it was a particularly great tournament deck, is not because like I don't think it will win, you know, its share of games or whatever, or in Swiss. I think there's like we talked about this a bit with
Kobito?
No, we've talked about this in the context of Winota, where like the issue with it is not that you'll never win, it's that like you'll run into a pod where the pod decides that you lose. And so when you have single elimination rounds, playing a deck like that becomes extremely risky. Because like if your pod just decides, hey, we're not letting you win, like then you just die in the semis, right? Like even if a bunch of people let you get
For example,
exactly.
Yeah,
It's like exactly what happened to me. And like the same thing can happen with Winota. It's less about like a decision with Winota and more about the matchup. Where some like you just kind of have a 0% matchup against like creature combo decks.
Or anything that's on.
Yeah. But like so a deck that even if I think, you know, it might do well in say a league, in tournaments there are games that you have to win, and with a deck like Cody you have some number of games that you can't win, and that is obviously there's some tension there.
Yeah,
I think post ban meta I'd actually pick Cody, like fresh post ban, like something like post flash ban. If Cody were a deck, that would definitely have crushed the tournament.
Would you play it like post Oracle ban? Like Oracle gets banned
post
tournament,
ban?
like a week later there's a tournament, you just bring Cody.
Well, maybe not Oracle, because how does Cody
just do breach stuff?
You just do breach stuff.
Just breach, I guess. Yeah, I think that's reasonable. Actually, well, post Oracle is actually a tough one. Because I can see a lot of people going
too much. Like
no, not that specifically. I think the meta would kind of like accurately shift into a bit more stack tier stuff, which would be a problem. We're thinking like
potentially like the stacks that they are playing doesn't hit you, right? Because maybe rule of laws are less valuable, so you just like go play other stuff instead. I don't know. Okay, like would like a dockside ban, would you bring the deck after that?
I think I would.
Okay.
There's just like a post ban shock, and it's like an irrational shock that people kind of just move to their brews or like other decks, you know, and that's just the perfect metagame. Like a metagame essentially not prepared for Cody.
Yeah, I can see it. Yeah,
but Oracle maybe specifically. It's tough to say, which is funny because it's maybe the highest one on the list. Well, actually, no, Dockside is. What am I saying? Because Dockside actually gets mentioned in like by the RC. Okay.
Yeah, I think it really petphobia. It really boils down to I like across the. I think a lot of the negative feelings about Cody can really be boiled down to a relatively hostile meta and a lack of player agency. And also, yeah, like Yeah, what Morgan was saying is that, like, I think it's, as well, it's, like, we're not surprised to see Cody make top 16. We would be very surprised to see Cody make top 4 or win a tournament.
I mean,
in the current meta. Like, it's...
You could certainly have a Cody deck make top 4. But yeah, I think, like, just basically the more single elimination rounds there are, the harder it is for Cody.
Man, the behavior around Cody, like political behavior, reminds me a lot of like Ristic Steady and Remora, but in kind of the opposite way. Because Cody has all of the certainty built in. Like, you know that you can't, like, if Cody were a tax, right, you know you have to pay the tax.
Yeah.
Where Ristic Steady, for some reason, it's the complete opposite. And it somehow still surprises people when, you know, someone with a Ristic Steady draws 10 cards and then you lose to that player. It's weird. I don't know, man. It's weird.
Well, I think we've adequately answered the question. Again, in terms of listener questions, all of our patrons can submit listener questions in our private patron channels, and we'll try our best to answer them on the podcast. Otherwise, for everybody else, we still have a public listener questions submission channel. So if you have anything that you want desperately to be answered on the podcast or off it, just throw them in there, throw it in general on the Discord, whatever, and we'll try to get around to it, try to answer it for you. But on that note, I think we're about to wrap it up for this episode. If anybody would like to reach out to us with any questions, comments, or concerns, you can contact us on Twitter at IntoTheNorthPod, via our email at IntoTheNorthPodcast@gmail.com, or on our Discord server, the invite link for which can be found in the description for this episode. An extra special thanks to all of our patrons who help cover the expenses for the show and allow us to work toward improving the quality of the podcast. If you too would like to become a patron, we're at patreon.com/IntoTheNorthPodcast. Another way you can support us is via our TCG Player affiliate link. Anytime you want to purchase something from TCG Player, if you use our affiliate link, which is in the description for the episode, a portion of your purchase goes towards supporting the podcast. Thank you, as always, to the band Vox Cadre for our lovely podcast music, to Nate Slover for our equally lovely podcast logo, and to our video editor, Manta Ray Hat. Next episode will be out in 2 weeks. Until then.